Should be. It hasn't started officially yet, at least it's not red. Yep, now it's recording. All right. So what we have for you today, I'm going to try to adjust this so that we can see both. I can see you guys and you guys can see the PowerPoint. We're doing the second part of our notes for the chapter. The last time we had a discussion day, we did net energy and we did subsidies. And net energy is the thing, subsidies is having the government pay your bills if they want what you've got. Okay, government or somebody in power, they help you pay your bills. And it's because net energy, what it is however much energy it takes to create something, to do something, to pull a resource out of the ground and then get it shipped out to where it is you're going to sell it. All of that energy that takes in the making, all right, compared to how much energy you're going to get when you're finally done, and then how much they're going to pay for it when you do it. You subtract those two and you get net energy, how much energy it takes to get it versus how much you're going to get when you sell it. Okay, so that's net energy, and we're going to use net energy to rank or verify or to see which ones of the different resources are better than others. Okay, we're going to use net energy as one of the criteria to judge how good these things are. And so what we've got then is that we're going to start the fossil fuels first, and we start with oil. Crude oil, although I always thought when they called it crude oil, that was yucky stuff we don't want. But the crude, I mean, oil is really gross to begin with, but crude oil is what they call the good stuff. Crude oil is the good stuff. It's also called petroleum, or they're slightly different products, but they're close enough to be lumped together in one sum. They're both a hydrocarbon. And what that means is that, first off, can you guys at home, can you see both the pictures of y'all and the PowerPoint?
No, I cannot.
You can't see the PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm going to unshare and reshare, because the last time I did it once with the ecology kids, I thought I was sharing the whole time and there was nothing there on the video. So let me try this again. All right, is that any better? Give it a few seconds for the lag, but did it show up that time?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. All right. So again, we're talking about crude. Thank you, baby. We're talking about crude oil, which is the good stuff, what everybody's after, the people in Texas pulling up out of the ground. Also called petroleum, and crude oil, like I said, is not exactly 100% the same thing, but they're close enough that you can use the terms interchangeably. They're both hydrocarbons. Carbon is it's the element that makes everything up. It's also, you know, black, and hydro means flowing. Okay, so these are the hydrocarbons formed over millions and millions of years. Okay, so how we got the crude oil first, how we got oil. The way we got this stuff is way back before the dinosaurs. And again, sorry, I have these long breaks in between talking because I'm trying to breathe. Way back before the dinosaurs, okay, way before the dinosaurs, there were trees, but they're not like our trees. Our trees have these wooden stems on them, the trunks, you know, what have you. These trees they had the soft green stems like houseplants do, except they were as big as a tree. Okay, they were huge, 3 stories, 4 stories tall houseplant. A houseplant that was that big with the soft green stem. All right, and again, this was way before the dinosaurs. Also before this, at this time, there was nothing had evolved yet on Earth that could break down part of the cell wall. Remember, all plants have cell walls. There's a chemical in the cell wall called lignin, Lignin. Lignin is a component of the cell wall. Nothing had evolved on Earth yet that could break down lignin. And so when these giant house plants died, they just kind of sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there. There was nothing to digest them, and they would die, and the next ones would grow and pile up on top, and the next ones would die and they'd pile up on top, and nothing could digest them, so they sat there. And you remember how sedimentary processes work. When you pile them up, they start to press down into the different sedimentary layers. Remember when you learned about the rock cycles? Okay, they press down and press down and press down. Now, as you can imagine, all that pressure, okay, on top of those green houseplant type of things. When I get flowers, like if it's my birthday or Mother's Day or something like that, when I get flowers, I keep them a little bit too long on my table just because I don't get them that often. And so by the time I get around to throwing them away, I go to lift the plants out of that vase. And I'm an awful housekeeper. There's brown goo around the stems of the bouquet. Now, if you can imagine, if you extend that to the size of these house plants and how many of them, the houseplant trees, and how many of them there were, can you imagine how easily that black goo would turn into, that brown goo would turn into what we understand as oil, especially pressing it down and pressing it down. You can very easily understand how that would make oil, and that's how we got it. Petroleum is something very, very similar with microscopic ocean creatures. Okay, the bodies of those microscopic ocean creatures getting pressed. Okay, so that's how we got those two. And so we know that oil is a non-renewable resource. And when they talk about non-renewable resources, what they say is that it's a resource that we're using up so quickly that the earth can't replace it for us. Okay, here's the thing. The earth will never be able to replace oil for us. Those house plants don't exist anymore. And we have a microbe of has evolved a long time, about the time of the dinosaurs. Remember, I said this was before the dinosaurs. So around the time of the dinosaurs, a microbe evolved that could digest lignin. So not only is there not enough time to make oil, we can't. Those plants are gone and the lignin's going to get digested. There's no way to make any more at all. So when it's gone, it's just going to be gone. Let's see. So why do we use it? Okay, so the conventional crude oil is abundant. Okay, we actually have a lot of it, especially here in the US. So it's the most widely energy source in the widely used energy source in the US. It has a medium net energy. Whoops, hold on. I don't mean to shuffle everything. Let's see. Control Z. Okay, it has a medium net energy. And again, think about how much energy it takes to pull it out of the ground based on what they're going to pay us once we get it out and sold. Okay, so it's a medium. We'll work with mediums and we'll work with high, but we don't want to mess with low net energy because it costs too much. So this is a medium, so we're good with it. But we know also, again, this is oil, fossil fuels. It causes air pollution, water pollution, releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And I'm going to talk some more about that also soon. So we know that that's the bad side of fossil fuels. Now that's the crude oil, the one that I say they call it the good stuff. All right, this is the stuff, not necessarily the good stuff. Heavy oil. Heavy oil is when when the oil wells run empty, you can dig out the remainders, dig out what's left. That's the heavy oil. Okay, we get that through the fracking that I was telling you about the other day. All right, so when a well runs dry, you can scrape out what's left, and that's heavy oil. But the problem with that is that it's really, really, really difficult to get it out. It takes a lot of energy to process it when you take it to the refinery. And so therefore its net energy is low. The only reason we would want to scrape this stuff out of the bottom of the wells is if somebody's going to pay really good for it. It has a really low net energy. So the only reason we'd get it if somebody is paying real high. Okay, that's going to factor into a lot of the discussion about oil today. How much people are willing to pay for it makes it worth it to dig it out of the ground. So that's one way. So the crude oil, that's what they call the good stuff. This heavy oil is what we get out of the bottom when we're doing the fracking, when the wells run sort of dry. And this other thing, tar sands. Tar sands. It's exactly what it sounds like. Canada is full of this stuff, but tar, you know what tar is, that sticky black stuff that's in asphalt. Sand, tar sands. So you have dirt and sand and pebbles and rocks and stuff mixed in with the tar. And so the only way you can use the tar is to take the dirt out of it. Can you imagine how difficult that would be? How energy exhaustive, how much energy and resources it would take to pull the sand out of that tar so that you can use that tar, take it to the refinery and turn it into, gasoline and stuff. You have to pull the sand and everything out of it. So the processing of that is ridiculous. And both the heavy oil that you're scraping out and the tar sands have incredibly high environmental impact when you try to do this. The environmental impact of this thing is ridiculous. So when you have crude oil, remember again, that's a good one, you have to take it to the refinery. So let me try to show you my picture of a refinery. Okay, so this is what it looks like. When down here at the bottom is where we start. You see down here on the bottom left? You start here with, you've dug it up out of the well, you've taken it from the well, you put it in a truck. Now all of this takes energy. You found the well, you made the well, you dug the hole, you got the oil up out of the ground, you put it on a truck, filled the truck with gasoline because all of that counts, and then you trucked it over here to the refinery. So that's a whole bunch of energy on the front end that we had to do to get it here. Once you take it to the refinery, okay, the first thing you're going to do is burn it. And yes, this is using coal. So this is another one of the fossil fuels that are getting used up. So you start to boil the oil. Oh, that's fun to say. Boil the oil. Okay. Now, oil has so much stuff in it that different parts of it come out of the boiling at different temperatures. All right. So they use that idea to do this refinery. These brown things on here are one-way valves. Okay. So once you start the oil boiling down here, the first thing that's going to come off is the gases because they're the lightest. They're going to come out and they're going to go right up to the top of this tube and out here to be collected. These are the gases like methane and propane. Let's put in, and let's see, 110. And this is methane and propane, okay, that come off first. And then the next thing we get is the gasoline that we use. That's the next one to come off the top. And then aviation fuel. As you go down the tower, you get heavier and heavier stuff. And then heating oil, which is kerosene. All right, diesel oil, okay, naphtha, which is turpentine, paint thinners. And then you see we're getting heavier and heavier, grease and wax. And finally, they scrape off the bottom, asphalt. Okay, so one of the reasons that crude oil has such a draw is that from one shipment of crude oil, you get all of these different kinds of stuff. Okay, so that's one of the reasons we're having to fight so hard to get this changed, to get this shifted over, because this is really darn useful. Okay, so let's put this down. Actually, yeah, I'm done with that. I can minimize that. Okay, so it has to get processed at the refinery before it can be turned into fuel. And then so to get there, it has to be transported by pipeline or truck or rail or ship. And then it's heated, like I showed you, to separate it into the different fuels. All right. And then, like all steps in the production, it requires an enormous amount of energy. And all of that energy on the front end to get it done is going to decrease its net energy. Okay, so right now, though, we are running out of oil. We know that everybody's been telling us since the 50s and 60s we're running out of oil. The oil wells, okay, only have about 10 years worth of work in them. Not that the pump is going to tear up, but that's all the oil that's in there, usually about 10 years worth. And after that, once you've hit that 10 years or so, it said that you've reached peak production. That means it's all downhill from there. So you've already reached peak production. It takes about 10 years. After peak production, that means you're going downhill and it's going to get less and less and less and cost more and more and more to get it up out of the ground. So peak production is the time at which after which the production from a well declines. And it can be on a single well, but it can also be on a whole oil field. I'm going to flip ahead and come back. This is an oil field. Okay, this is one pump, and this is a whole field of them. Okay, so not only will that one pump run dry in about 10 years, the whole field will run dry after about 10 years. So when that happens, though, that's not just that. What we believe is that we have reached the global peak production worldwide. We think that every oil field, every oil well, all of them have reached their peak and are all going down decline. So that means it's going to get really dangerous really fast. We are so dependent on oil. And you know this, you've seen this. We are so dependent on oil that when the resources start to get scarce, people are going to start to fight because there's going to be less and less available. All right. So are we running out of conventional oil? Yes, we are. Okay. Proven oil reserves is the next thing that we're going to talk about. Proven oil reserves is a number or an estimate of how much oil we have available at the current time. And the different nations use it as measuring blocks to judge their global economy with everybody else. I have this many proven oil reserves. I have this many proven oil reserves. I have this many. So proven oil reserves is how much oil we have that we're able to get to at any one time. Now it's a fluid number. The number changes because as looking down here at our list, as demand increases or as the price increases, both of those are related to one another. As more people want it, they'll pay more for it. And if they'll pay more for it, I can dig that stuff up out of the bottom of the wells. If the demand gets higher, I can get you more if you're willing to pay for it. It's too expensive to get it right now, so I don't count it in my proven oil reserves. It's too expensive to get to right now, so it's not counted with my proven oil reserves. But if the demand increases and therefore the price increases, if more people want it, I'll get it for you, and then I can say my proven oil reserves are greater if you're willing to pay for it. All right, technology will also determine how much proven oil reserves I have. As we get better technology to get more out of the ground, like the idea of fracking, that's new technology. And the new technologies will also increase our proven oil reserves. So again, it's not a solid number. It's not a set number. It changes based on demand, market price, and new technologies can also change it. But it's our measuring stick, one country into the next, who's got the most. It's like a contest. All right. So how do we increase our oil supplies? Okay. The higher prices and more efficient technology is going to turn previously unavailable oil deposits into proven reserves, like I just told you, right? We get better technology or higher prices. Now, all of a sudden, I can get you more if you need it, and that's the proven oil reserves. Horizontal drilling and fracking are two of the newest technologies that we're using to increase our reserves. And horizontal drilling is exactly what it sounds like. You go down and you go sideways from the wells to get more out of them. Fracking is the thing I told you the first day, when you are throwing water and sand and everything down into that tube to push real high pressure to push it down. And gases, the natural gases, are usually the first thing to come up, but we also get that heavy oil coming up that was left at the bottom of the wells. Okay, so that's how horizontal drilling and fracking are two technologies that are allowing us to increase our proven reserves. Other ways to get more crude oil. Okay, we can do offshore drilling on the deep seabeds. Okay, but think about that. Drilling the deep seabeds. It's very dangerous. Okay, think of storms and weather and wind and the people who have to do this. It's very dangerous. It's very difficult to do. And we are just beginning to explore the deepest parts of the ocean. Do you think it's a really good idea to start tearing it up before we've finished exploring it? It's very, very damaging to the environment, very expensive to do. Now this one here, whoops, whoa, lost my place. Okay, drilling the more remote areas of the Arctic. Now this is a crazy bad idea. You guys remember, do you guys remember what permafrost is? Permafrost is that frozen ground, frozen dirt, but it's not just dirt. In that dirt, you have leaves, plant roots, you'll have dead animals, you have all sorts of stuff in the ground, but it's all frozen. That's permafrost. Now think about your own freezer. All right. When your freezer's working just fine, you've got meat in there, you've got frozen vegetables in there, and everything's just fine. But if your freezer breaks and all that stuff starts to rot, you've got a problem. Permafrost is the same way. As the world is warming, as climate is changing, the permafrost is beginning to melt. As the permafrost melts, the microbes in the ground are starting to digest or starting to rot. The grasses, the roots, the leaves, the dead animals, all of those things are starting to rot. And when things rot, when the microbes cause things to rot, the microbes put out carbon dioxide and methane. Carbon dioxide and methane are two of the worst greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide and methane are the two worst greenhouse gases. So too much greenhouse gases is causing the permafrost to melt. When the permafrost melts, those microbes start to rot everything in there and they release carbon dioxide and methane, which increases the carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere, which warms the world, which causes more of the permafrost to melt, which causes more rot, which causes more carbon dioxide and methane, which warms the atmosphere and causes even more. Do you see how this is a circle? A vicious circle? It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. Once you start melting the permafrost, it is a cycle that snowballs and gets worse and worse and worse. So both of these are options for oil supplies, okay, but they're much harder and more expensive to extract. You have a lot lower net energy and much, like I tell you, much higher environmental impact and also higher oil prices. You will wind up paying a lot more for this oil than we do for the other oil. So once the global peak is reached, the net energy is going to decline and decline, and the prices are going to rise and rise. So again, you're looking at wars. The amount of energy we get is going to decline. The prices are going to increase, and when you have to fight over resources, you have wars. Let's see. All right, let me drop this on the page real quick. All right, so it is 1:20. All right. Let's see. Try again. Then I'll try it again. There we go. Now minimize that. Okay, so the next thing we're going into is the advantages and disadvantages of the crude oil. Okay, so yes, there are advantages to this. We have a lot of it as far as comparatively speaking. We have ample supplies for many decades. We have many decades left before this stuff completely runs out. It is a medium net energy. And it has pretty low land disruption. If you look at that field, that oil field, it looks pretty gross. But as far as overall, the crude oil doesn't have a lot of land disruption and it's very efficient. The disadvantages, okay, you have oil pollution from the spills, you have leaks, you have air pollutants, and it's this last part, vulnerable to international supply interruptions. Vulnerable to international supply interruptions. Let's say we have a buddy out there who sells us oil, one of the other countries. He sells us oil and we give him money or we give him products or we give him whatever, and things are working all fine, hunky dory. What if the guy decides he doesn't want to sell us oil anymore, or he wants to start charging more than we want to pay? Okay, this guy's not our friend anymore. Okay, so we go to war. Every single war has always been about resources. This one wants whatever this one has. Every war is that. This one wants whatever this one has. They can tell you that the wars are humanitarian. Oh, they're hurting their people. We need to go step in, save these people. Oh, this is so bad. We can't let them continue doing this. These guys are so awful. No, no. All it is this person wants what this person has. Every war in the world has ever been that. And so when we start having vulnerable international supply interruptions to the oil, then there will be wars. All right, this set of questions here, there will be one with each one of the different types of energy. And I mentioned this in the teaching video, which I know that you all watched the teaching video because I asked you to, and I thank you for that. In the teaching video, I mentioned that these questions might show up on another worksheet. You answered them already as part of your notes. I'm not going to ask you to answer them twice. You already answered them as part of the notes. If they show up on a worksheet, just get them from the notes and put them there. See what I'm saying? You've already answered these in your notes, and I need them answered in your notes. You were supposed to answer them in your notes. So if they do show up on a worksheet, just grab them from the notes and put them on there. Okay, you guys understand what I'm saying? Because they may show up. Because this is a great way to put them all together to help you as you study for your test. Okay, so they may show up that way. All right. Is it time to go? Wow, I didn't even finish. Shoot. All right. Heavy oil, tar sands. Okay. All right, let me cut this last slide right here. So what are we going to do when we run out of oil? Okay. First, we have the choice. We can live with these higher prices. We're talking us at the gas tank. Okay. You can live with the higher prices at the gas tank, or you can expand the oil supplies, meaning going into that heavy oil or those tar sands. But that's expensive to do, so it's still going to raise your prices. So the first two choices when we run out of oil, live with the higher prices or expand the oil supplies, or the third choice, find something else to use. And that's what we will need to do. Don't go yet. I've got to run the meeting. Got to run the meeting list. And there it goes. Y'all are dismissed over here, and you guys are dismissed there. See you tomorrow.